It's great to see everyone at our second Women's Philanthropy event. We're so thrilled that you could join us here at the lake and enjoy this gorgeous view with us this afternoon. If you're still getting food, that's perfectly fine, but we are going to go ahead and start the program. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce Janet L. Gooch, our 7th Chancellor of the University of Illinois Springfield. She's an accomplished higher education leader and educator. At UIS, Chancellor Gooch is working to enhance the university's impact by attracting a more diverse student body, addressing workforce needs, and promoting social mobility. Her focus is on using experiential education to supply employers with skilled graduates, while also expanding teaching methods to cultivate critical thinking and interpersonal skills. Under her leadership, UIS is growing as a community that values varied perspectives, civic engagement, and having a positive impact on the region and the world. She wants UIS to be known as a university with the power to transform individual lives and communities through an unwavering focus on producing informed and inclusive leaders. Chancellor Gooch, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Katie. I am very glad to be here again this year. I remember this event from last year and how special it was, and I'm glad to see everyone back together for kind of a reunion. We did have an excellent turnout last year, and it's amazing to see how the event has grown. As you know, women play an integral role in philanthropy. We are so fortunate to have this special opportunity to bring a group of women together who share the desire to give back. In a few minutes, you'll hear about some areas on our campus that help address students' needs or provide learning opportunities for our students and our community members. As I'm sure you already know, there are always a lot of great programs, initiatives, and events happening on our campus that provide meaningful and fun opportunities for involvement and engagement. We welcome your involvement. The best way to stay connected is by reaching out to our development directors. In the program, you can find their pictures, contact information, and the areas that they support. So if you have an interest, please feel free to reach out to them. Women's philanthropy in higher education is a force to be reckoned with, one that is driving transformative change, promoting gender equity, and fueling groundbreaking research. One of the significant reasons for this momentum is the importance we place on empowering individuals and societies. Women, more than anyone, understand the power of education and how it can change lives for the better. By investing in higher education, women philanthropists are sowing the seeds for a brighter future, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. Today, I have the pleasure of sharing 2 stories with you about women who believe in paying it forward and leveraging their philanthropic interests to do just that. As a student in the 1970s, Diane Firk was working her way through college with some assistance from her parents. She'd never pursued a scholarship opportunity, but one day, out of the blue, she received a letter from the university notifying her that she was the recipient of a $50 scholarship from the Owen Jackman Sullivan Award. This gift from a perfect stranger made a lasting impression on Diane. And to this day, she has kept the letter as a reminder of the donor's legacy and kindness. Diane is a former Associate Dean and Associate Professor Emerita of the UIS College of Business and Management, and she has supported several programs throughout her 20-plus year tenure as a faculty member, and she continues her support today. Through her work with Larry Golden, retired director of the Illinois Innocence Project, she became familiar with some of the clients who were exonerated in their powerful stories. This was a profound experience for Diane, and she recognized how fundamental justice is the preservation and advancement of our society. Diane chose to memorialize her parents, Rudolph Firk Jr. and Sophie Mang Firk, through an endowed, unrestricted gift to benefit the Illinois Innocence Project. She wanted to do so to honor their sacrifices and investment in her success. Diane feels strongly that no matter the amount of the gift, it has a rippling effect. You never know how even a modest gift can make a big difference in someone's life. She is especially proud of her son Nicholas, who upon graduating from college inspired 3 of his friends to join him in creating a scholarship fund for their program. They each give $500 a year, providing a $2,000 scholarship annually for a deserving student. Which also goes to show that you're never too young to give. And now I'd like to share a story about a mother and a daughter and their journey of philanthropy. In the late 1980s, Gussie was working full-time and raising her young daughter, Juanita. To advance her education, she looked for a local business program that offered evening and weekend classes. Sangamon State University was the perfect fit. Gussie didn't have childcare, so she would bring Juanita to campus with her on the nights she had class, and Juanita would wait in Brookins Library while doing her homework. Gussie's favorite professor was Dr. Joe Wilkins, who gave her some tremendous advice that she carried throughout her career about the importance of building relationships in business. She continued to advance her career, eventually becoming one of the first Black women in leadership at Ameren, Illinois. Although Gussie retired a few years ago, she has not slowed down. She currently serves on the board for Macon County Court-appointed special advocates and Decatur Memorial Hospital. But her favorite job is spoiling her grandchildren. With Juanita spending so much time on campus as a child, Sangamon State was a natural fit when it was time for her to attend college. Juanita graduated with her bachelor's degree in mathematics in 1996 and went on to Illinois State University to pursue both her master's and her doctoral degrees. Juanita is the first person in her family to earn a doctorate. She's had a successful career across the country as an instructor and an administrator at several historically Black colleges and universities. As a civic engagement leader for Decatur, Illinois Public Schools in partnership with the Howard G. Buffett Foundation, and today she hosts her own talk radio program, The Morris Code. Additionally, Juanita runs her own company. Pretty impressive, all this, isn't it? J. Morris Enterprises, and leads the Mamie D. Hayes Educational Foundation. After Gussie's retirement a few years ago, she and Juanita decided to create a scholarship in Gussie's name to help a student at UIS. This will be the first year their scholarship, the G.M. Reed Scholarship, is awarded, and they cannot wait to meet the recipient at the upcoming annual scholarship luncheon. Gussie and Juanita embody female leadership and a dedication to philanthropy, and we are proud to have them as UIS donors and alumni. I'd like to take a few moments to celebrate the impact women are making at UIS and in our greater community. I shared some of these numbers last year, but I want to highlight them again because they are truly meaningful. The average age of a UIS female donor who gives her first gift is 44 years old. And on average, UIS female donors make 11 gifts during their lifetime. I think the most exciting update from last year is the increase in planned gifts from female philanthropists. Since we met last year, 2 additional planned gifts have been created. In the last 12 months, more than 2,000 women philanthropists have given more than $800,000 to areas across UIS that are important to them. Now think about that. Yeah. $2,000 women giving more than $800,000. That makes a change. We must continue to support and encourage the next generation of women philanthropists. We need them to step forward to make their mark, shaping the future of education and society. And now it is my pleasure to turn the program over to some amazing UIS faculty and staff to talk about their roles in our UIS community. I would like to invite Dr. Tom Rothfuss to the podium to tell us about the UIS field stations.
All right, so the UIS field stations, I'm just going to talk about them pretty quickly. We don't have a whole lot of time to do that, but we have 2 of these field stations. But I'm going to first get through and give you a real quick introduction to me. So I direct the 2 UIS field stations, the Thurkelson Field Station at Emaquan, and the UIS field station at Lake Springfield, which is this lovely building that you guys are in right now. To give you a little bit of background about myself, I did my undergraduate at Cornell College over in Iowa, where I studied geology, biology, and a little bit of history. A big part of my education was being able to go outside, get dirty, go in the field, be in the water, play on the rocks, do all these different sorts of things. I even managed to do that with history, going on a trip to do a different library so I could do field work for that subject as well. Spent a lot of time working on fossil coral reefs, as well as thinking about fossils in the broader sense and how they fit into history and religion and things like that. Went on to graduate school to the University of Chicago, where I studied paleontology. I was really focused on how the way the fossils look, how they're preserved, how this impacts the type of ecological information we can get from them. What I was really involved with was trying to figure out how we could look at freshly dead things, mostly clams, snails, arthropods, things like that, but how we could take the freshly dead, figure out how they relate to the living community, and look back into the past at what we see preserved, because this is a great way where we can see what was going on hundreds to thousands of years ago to try to understand ecological challenges in the world today. After I finished graduate school, I went down to the Bahamas for a while, hung out there where I was the director of a research center on a very small island, spent a lot of time training graduate students in ways to conduct research, helped lots of different courses and researchers with their logistics and getting them doing lots of stuff. And I always talk about Bahamian rock iguanas. I had never had anything to do with vertebrates, much less iguanas, before in my life. I suddenly became very involved with this rare and endangered species, and ultimately helped repatriate some that had been smuggled into the UK for a while with those. So that was an interesting side story, just of the diverse type of projects that I like to be involved in. One reason that I've been drawn to field stations, and I'll tell you more about field stations in a few minutes, is just the diversity of different kinds of projects that can happen in there. Some people who I went to school with, to grad school with, they study the same organism their entire life. That's fine. I would be really bored doing that. I prefer to jump from one topic to another, and so these settings are great for me, as well as the opportunity to work with students in these settings. I get to learn from what they're doing, and they get to learn and gain these hands-on experiences that we all think are quite valuable. So I've said the word field station quite a few times. For me, this is just a common word. I've been at field stations for well over half my life, but for most people, it's sort of a foreign concept. So field stations, generally speaking, they serve as platforms for multiple researchers who are seeking to understand the surrounding environment. And generally speaking, they divide their work into 3 ways: among research, education, and outreach. And different field stations will have different balances of how they handle these things, but that's generally the main part of what's going on with them. They give students hands-on experience, and that's one of the big parts about a field station, and it's one reason why I've always been so attracted to working at one and being involved with one. These can be short field trips. We get lots of students from UIS who come out here, do some things in the water, do some things looking at the trees and plants around here. But so they can be short field trips. They can be entire courses built around the field station that you're attending. I used to teach courses this way. I think it's a great way for students to get fully immersed in the environment, figure out what's going on in the system, and learn lots of practical hands-on experiences that way. And they can also be sites of collaborative research, generally with a faculty mentor of some kind. In my previous work, we used to work a lot with students and even got many journal articles that they were able to publish out of these experiences. And so this is really big for students as they're moving on their career to have the opportunity to gain these opportunities. One thing that's really important, historically field stations were viewed as the domain of geology or biology. It was very much these field sciences. For me, and this is, I think the field is starting to shift this way, they should not be limited to the physical or natural sciences. I've worked with groups at different facilities doing biology, geology, chemistry, all the expected ones, archaeology, but also astronomy, history, art, photography, literature, writing, Culinary arts is one of the big ones. I had people telling me there's no way a culinary arts course could work at a facility that I was working at. And it ended up being a really great opportunity for those students. They're training to be chefs. They learned how to work in remote areas. They learned the challenges that you might experience if you don't just have enough money to throw at the problem. And so it was a great experience for those students. We gained a lot from them. I always struggled with our menus. We were pretty remote. We couldn't get a hold of a lot of different things, and so they helped us develop vegan and vegetarian options that we didn't have and trained my kitchen staff in how to do those sorts of things. So there's always opportunities for different types of programs to benefit from these experiences at field stations. And the last thing I like to say about field stations, I had a professor in grad school. I used to TA a lot of courses for him out in the field. And what he used to say is the best geologist is the one who has seen the most rocks. And this sort of sounds like a silly thing to say, and maybe it's an obvious thing in a way. But what Fred was really talking about is that as any sort of field scientist, any person doing any sort of job, experience is the most important thing. And again, that's why I view these facilities as such an important part for students going through their training at the university. And that's why I think UIS students in particular have a fantastic opportunity. We have two facilities, both of which I'll talk about in a couple minutes here. They're both pretty close to campus, and so our students get the opportunity to engage in these hands-on experiences. One thing that's come up more and more in the field station literature when you start reading about these things and field courses going on is how they're not available to all students. They're often costly. Often you have to be able to take time off work, you have to be able to take time spent away, and so it's not equally available to all students. And I think at UIS we have this fantastic situation where these spaces are so close to campus, they don't come with a lot of additional cost for the students, and they don't come with additional cost in terms of their time for doing some of this stuff. So the Thurkelson Field Station at Emaquan. Have any of you been up to the Emaquan Preserve at all? Quite a few of you, actually. So for those who have not, it's up near Havana, Illinois, close to Dixon Mounds Museum, if you're familiar with that area. It was established by UIS in 2008. It's located within the Nature Conservancy's Emaquan Preserve. And so the Emaquan Preserve is this fantastic restoration project that was started in the early 2000s, restoring some wetland areas along the Illinois River, as well as some prairie areas and upland forest spaces. And one of the ideas about our facility going in there when UIS and the Nature Conservancy started partnering back in early 2000s about this was in order to have not only our students be able to use the space to conduct research and learn from the restoration, but also for our facility to be a space that could provide outreach and education to the surrounding communities. And so we get lots of high school groups, community college groups, continuing education groups through Illinois Extension, for example, that come out there. I throw them into the water. We put on waders before doing that. We get them out in the water, get them walking around in the mud. They grab a net. We sample for some macroinvertebrates. I then get them up there sorting through these different bugs, and then we ultimately come back into our lab where they're able to look at these things under the microscope. Some of you in here have done that with me. I think everybody who's done this thinks it is a fantastic experience. I've yet to have anybody complain about that. Even the ones who fall don't usually complain too much. But so these are the kinds of things that we like to do up there, is really show people how these settings work, how we're scientists, and how we can connect all of this to what we're doing. So that space, the building up there, we have a couple lab spaces. We have a classroom, a conference room. But really it's all about logistical sampling equipment, field gear, and other things like that. As I mentioned, it's about an hour and 15 minutes away from campus here, so not too far a drive. If you worked in a busy city, it would just be a standard commute for you on any given day. As I mentioned, these are the types of groups that we get there. We also get lots of research from outside of UIS. I routinely have students, graduate students who we house from Champaign, but also from Missouri, from up in the Chicago area, from Indiana. We've had students from Harvard come stay while doing other research there. So we are attracting users from a great deal of other universities. And so sort of our theme up there is that we connect researchers and students of all ages to the Emaquan Preserve, and I think that all ages is a big part of it for us. We'll do work with elementary school groups, high school groups, as I mentioned, continuing ed. These are just a few of the types of projects that we have going on there. One project we had going on for a while was with camera traps, where we were trying to look at the different organisms that made use of the Emiquon Preserve. And what's cool about this, the reason I'm showing it, other than it's just a picture of a deer, is I collaborated with one of my colleagues over in computer science, and what we started doing is, as I said, I have all these images and I can't go through them fast enough. I can't have students go through them fast enough to say this is a muskrat, this is an otter, this is a deer, this is a coyote, this is a bobcat. And so he said, here, we can do this with the computer. And so what we've been doing is using AI to be able to identify these. And so the computer was 98% certain that that was a deer, and it was in fact correct. Another big project we have going on up there is Dr. Fen Ting from Environmental Studies has been working with reintroducing or helping boost the numbers of osprey in Illinois. They're still listed as state threatened. And so she's been doing this hacking project where they bring juvenile osprey from places that they're doing well on the East Coast, but they're sort of a nuisance there because they're at an airport or something like this. They bring the juveniles here, they get raised, and then they fly south, migrating for a couple years. And in theory, they return to the area where they first flew from. And we're starting to see some successful birds with their bands coming back. So her students and technicians spend a couple months every year staying up at the field station with us each year. Over here is another AI project we're doing with drones, flying around the preserve, seeing if we can use the computer to help identify invasive plants. In this case, we're looking for Phragmites, which if you look in your brochure, there's a silhouette of a plant. That happens to be an invasive Phragmites that they chose for this brochure. It is attractive, so I understand why it was picked, but that's there if you need a better visual than what we're seeing up here. And then down here, we've had a long-term project with Dr. Amy McCune from biology. Every couple of years, she gets students monitoring the prairie restoration project. Just had one of her grad students staying with us again this year, continuing that. So it's almost a 20-year survey now, so it's starting to be some very long data on these things. And then, of course, some students getting out in the water and having fun, learning about bugs. So the UIS field station, I don't need to tell you where that is because you have successfully found it. We were established around 2018, so just a few years ago. We sort of had a slow, soft opening. If you had been here when we first started, this room was very green. There was a big bar in here and different stuff like that. But we've since transitioned to where we have the start of a lab space and this great common room that gets used by all sorts of different programs. Let's see, this is a multi-purpose facility, so we get events like this, we get workshops, we get classes, and we have lots of different research happening in the space. There's also lots of recreational opportunities. There'll be kayaking theoretically later today, although it looks like it might be raining. We'll get some people fishing out there, and we get other groups who just come by and do homework and other things like that outside. It's always fun for me when I look out and see some students hanging out and making use of that space. As I mentioned, a number of courses happen here, and I have been doing quite a bit of research with different students. It's a lot easier for me to get them here for an hour or two than it is to get up to Emiquon, even though it's great to have them up there as well. And so here what we do is, so we're always looking who can we connect, and so here we're trying to connect the UIS community with Lake Springfield. When we first got this facility, I learned that a lot of UIS students did not know that there was a lake in Springfield, much less that it was this close to campus. I don't know if that tells us more about the lake, about Springfield, or about the students, but nevertheless, that's how the situation was. And so we do a lot of different types of projects here, mostly focused on what we can see at the lake. So one thing I've been working with Professor Anne-Marie Hansen in environmental studies with is looking at litter and especially plastic pollution in Illinois waterways. And so very conveniently we're located here. We've focused a lot on fishing and tobacco-related litter, just because these are two of the things that come up very commonly no matter where you're studying litter issues. I forget how many miles of fishing line we've collected. We've been working with CWLP. If you go to any of the beaches or fishing areas, you'll see these funny looking PVC pipes that look like upside down J's. Those are for fisher people to dispose of the extra line that they may have had come unspooled. I think we've estimated that we got somewhere around 15 miles of line right now. Additionally, we collect line from elsewhere, we map it, we try to figure out where they can do a better job of having more disposal stuff out there. Similarly, we're trying doing things with cigarette butts where we've mapped every cigarette butt that we find around the lake. Trying to see, it doesn't sound that exciting, but you get to be outside, like it's a good thing. But again, with the idea that we can assist with CWLP on where we can put garbage cans, trash cans, other disposal methods out there. Another cool project that I had going on in the lab here, this was actually right in the beginning of COVID, but I had a student who was really interested in freshwater mussels, and freshwater mussels are amazing. They're one of my favorite organisms. People, again, think they're sort of boring, but they're quite cool. What they do is they filter all the water around them, and they can filter the water many, many times a day if you have a big enough mussel bed. They used to be hyper-abundant throughout Illinois, but pollution has made things hard on them, and so has, in the early 1900s, the button industry was devastating to mussels. Buttons used to be made out of wood, then they invented those rollers for washing your clothes, and it would split all the wood along the seam. And then somebody figured out very cleverly that you could use a mussel shell, punch out a button from that, and those became a big way to have buttons, but it sort of devastated our mussel population in the state. So what Dakota was doing is she was filming the mussels. She'd add fresh lake water to the tank. It would be all cloudy, all hazy, and then she would record it, and over just a couple-hour period of time, the water would go from being very hazy to being crystal clear, and so we were able to take care of things like that. Up here, Amy McCune working with students, teaching them about poison ivy on that cottonwood tree. And then over here, and this is what I'm going to show you guys later on today, is this cool toy I have. It's called a flow cam. We're using it for all sorts of different types of research, looking at plankton, looking at cyanobacteria, hopefully looking at microplastics soon. We have a biology class that uses it to look at yeast, but basically this is an automated microscope. We can get thousands and thousands of images in just a few minutes. And so it's really changing the way that we can engage in some different research. I've been doing a lot of work with this with some students and collaborating with CWLP to try to understand some of the taste and odor issues they occasionally have with the water. So that is all I have. I don't know if I have time for questions. Somebody? Yes? So I can take some questions from you right now, and again, later we'll be doing some demos, and I'll be happy to talk about some of the projects. I wanted to try to get through this stuff really quick, but you had a question?
Yeah, do you get a lot of students walking over from the campus here, or are they driving cars to get here?
So it's a mix. I'll have some who definitely do walk. Were quite a few who were biking. We were trying to get a bike rack here, and I know it's in a list somewhere for grounds to take care of. But unfortunately, a lot of them do end up driving. But when we have classes, they tend to carpool and things like that. But it's the walk. I think people get deceived by how far away they think it is. I've walked it, and I guess I walk quick, but in like, 14, 15 minutes, like it's not that far.
You just can't see it.
You just can't see it, and you can cut through that one subdivision and stay off of traffic, and that's the other thing, is I think people don't know which way to walk. Yep.
I live right across from the lake, and sometimes I go over on the dock, and I see snakes. What are the different kinds of snakes? I can't identify everything I see.
Is it a good size one?
I don't know. I was swimming.
Yeah, so I think they're the eastern water snake. They can get to be pretty big. Up at Emaquan, this is at Emaquan, the Nature Conservancy did these benches that are, the lower part is a metal cage, and inside there is concrete they recycled from the farm where they were restoring it. And I have seen multiple snakes inside there because it heats up really nicely. So I always tell people that they probably shouldn't sit on the benches. But that would be one of these eastern water snakes. They're mostly harmless to a person. Maybe just a little bite. Yep?
On the invasive species of plant, is this the plant we see towering above the bean fields?
Possibly, but probably not.
Okay.
You'll see these in a lot of the ditches along 55. You see them back past CWLP. I've noticed them, but mostly along roadside ditches. What happens, we have a native version of it, but the invasive one, they do get super tall. They grow in these really dense stands. They block everybody else out from there. And their seed heads, though, will persist for a full, almost year where you can see them out there visually. So the highway people try to cut them down in different areas. CWLP has been trying to control them on the lake. They had me helping them ID someone, because they're nice and take me out for that sampling. They pick me up with their boat, CWLP, just out here, and we go cruise around, get some samples, and I try to tell them things that we see that are funny out there. Yep.
Does the university have boats? Do they own any boats or kayaks or what?
So we have, up at Emmett Pond, we have a motorboat that we use going out into the preserve. We also have a couple kayaks up there. And we do have canoes that we can borrow from the Nature Conservancy there. Here, we have canoes and kayaks that Rec on campus brings over. There's some of them parked out here right now for trips going out during the day. So students can check out those canoes and kayaks and head out on the water. I'm always amused because it seems like half the students have never been in a canoe or kayak before, and so you see them start going in like little circles and funny S-curves around the place. And then eventually they get the hang of it. We don't have a motorboat right here. One of the things, my father-in-law has some boats, and he also has a sign that says, "A boat is a hole in the water into which one pours money." And so I try to keep that in mind, because while it would be great if somebody else wants to pick me up in their boat and take me out on the water, that works better for me from the maintenance side as well. Yep.
You mentioned housing in Emmett. How many in the house?
So we have 3 rooms where we can sleep people, and they have bunk beds in them, so we can fit 12. Because it's 3 rooms, it sort of depends on the balance of who we have, genders, those sorts of things going on out there. I prefer not to have that many people, just because it's not that huge a building to have 12. This summer, I think I had 4 to 5 who were there for about 4 months so far. There's 2 who are still up there tracking the osprey. So yeah, that space is occupied quite often with grad students, primarily working on different bird projects. Last year I had some students from Champaign who were working on whippoorwills, who are out late in the evening. It was very strange because I'm not used to ever seeing the students when I'm there, because they should all be out doing field work. And these ones studying things where they would work from like 9 p.m. until 5 a.m. They were all like sleeping or staggering around to the facility, and so it was just a very different thing to have the people studying the nighttime stuff, but it was cool to have them working at a different group up there. Yep.
Have you identified all the trees around here, or do you know what kind of trees you have?
Just on our property?
Yes.
We have not. I actually have a student, a grad student in environmental studies. One of the things they have to do is some variety of internship as part of their completion. So he's working with me and with CWLP, including a UIS alumni, Sarah Lindholm, but we're working on mapping in the different parks around the lake. They want to have a full inventory on that. And so strangely, we have not started with our property, but we are mapping up at North Cotton Hill, or West Cotton Hill Park, is where we're moving through. And that's one where they have some of the older trees around the lake are situated in that spot. So hopefully, so that's a great kind of project. I like tree projects for students because trees don't move. And so if they're not comfortable with their identification or they feel they did it wrong, we can always come back out there and that same tree should be there. And if it's gone, then we don't have to worry about it because they cut it down. And so for that reason, those tree projects are great, but I think that's the kind of project where we'll be able to have generations of master's students, but also undergrads working on, because even if it's somebody who's unfamiliar or not confident on their IDs, part of what we do is we get a measurement at 4.5 feet around the tree, and we measure the crown span, and we get their heights figured out. And so I can have a student go back to the same park 5 years later who's like, I don't know anything about trees. They don't have to worry about being able to ID them. They have the GPS coordinates. They'll have a list of what the trees are so they can learn them that way. They're just taking new measurements to see how they've changed over time. And so I think it's a great kind of project that we can build up and continually allow students of different abilities to take part in different ways. And that's one of the things, I'm always trying with some of these different things. That's why we work on microplastics in different ways. I got the plankton, we got the trees. It's trying to have things that students with different interests can also become involved with.
Have you ever done research on the tree in West Continental Park that's supposed to be the oldest tree in Sangamon County?
Yeah, so that's actually why the students started there, because CWP wants to highlight that park because of that tree, but also there's a few others in that space that they want to draw more attention to and say, see, this is some of the positive sort of environmental aspects that are going on around the lake. So we'll see more about that one and be able to track it. And Katie's going to make me leave now.
Right. All right. Well, thank you all for having me here. I did not prepare great jokes like Tom, but I hope to hold your interest here telling you about the UIS Cares Food Pantry. So before we get into how our pantry is operated today and the usage today, I just want to kind of start with informing you about how it started, how it began, and how it's grown since it began. So I know we have at least one, probably other Rotarians here attending, and so this actually started by a student organization called Rotaract, which is the college version of Rotary, and so their motto is service above self. And so this is a group of students that they look at community issues and what can they do about them. And so this was also during a time when a lot of data, a lot of discussion was coming out about food insecurity on college campuses. We know about food pantries in our communities, but it really was kind of a new thing to think about. What about college students specifically? And their needs, and are they getting the food that they need? So the National Student Campaign Against Hunger and Homelessness came out with some data. So to kind of summarize this, if you look, the blue and the green especially, a little bit in the pink, essentially about half of the students in this study had low food security. So that is very, very concerning when you think about it. Students skip meals sometimes because they don't have enough money for food. Students lose weight because they don't have enough money for food, and sometimes go throughout the whole day without eating. I know a lot of students when they're, they have their budget, they have all the different things that they're paying for. Food sometimes, they see that as a way that, oh, I can skip this or buy less food because I have to pay my rent and I have to pay my tuition so I can remain a student. So that was very concerning, and that's essentially how the food pantry began. The effects of hunger, though, on college students. Of course, it's increased likelihood that their GPA is going to be lower, right? It's harder to focus when we're hungry. There's this term hangry, right? I know I get hangry sometimes, right? If you're hungry, it can make you grumpy, it can make you angry, and it can be difficult to focus on things. So for students especially, it's really hard to focus and do well and succeed in their classes when they are facing food insecurity. So as a result, lower class attendance, lower completion rates, and lower retention overall. And so that's not what we want here at UIS. So additionally, as we know, health and well-being suffers, increased rates of stress and depression, and a lot of times when students don't have much money for food, they buy the cheapest food options possible. So high sodium, leads to other just poor health outcomes. So this group, though, in 2016, they communicated with the campus, let them know that they wanted to start a food pantry on the campus, and so they worked with our facilities to find a space that would be appropriate for the food pantry. There's always kind of a couple things you have to consider with the food pantry. Kind of a couple different ways of thinking about it is you want it to be in a space where students know how to find it, right? And you know, you could have the thinking of it should be in a space where students could pass by and notice, oh, what's this? Oh, it's a food pantry. Oh, I didn't know, you know, this resource was available for me. But there's also a stigma around getting help, accessing help, and using a food pantry. So another way of thinking is that it should be in a more private place where students will be more likely to use that service if they need it because they won't be in an area where others may see that they're getting help. So with where our pantry is at now, I believe it's in a really nice spot. It's on our Legacy campus. So in our student affairs building, kind of at the end of the hallway, so that it is fairly easy to find, but also not in a part of campus that it's very obvious when students walk out with groceries that, you know, they're not running into a lot of their friends and seeing other people. So this group, though, they found this space. It started out, it was essentially a closet, very, very small space. Our pantry today is about the size of, I don't know, it's not even, maybe a fifth of this room, definitely smaller than that. So it's a little bit bigger than what it was to start out. But we started out with donation bins, just like the one that you all contributed to outside. I appreciate that. Thank you. So we have 8 of those bins throughout the campus, and intentionally they weren't put in residence halls because we don't want students who are using this resource to also feel like they need to support it. So it's where the staff and faculty often pass by. So we have 8 of those throughout the campus to encourage donations of non-perishable items. So we have student staff that will go out several times a week and collect from those bins. So essentially this group built campus support and awareness of this resource and started the food pantry. So the ultimate goal, of course, is to help reduce the stress and the anxiety that students have and allow them to be able to complete their degree in a timely manner so that, you know, worrying about food is one less thing that they need to worry about. So we provide, when students visit, we provide enough food for them to where they can make several meals to help kind of give them a little boost to help them along. So essentially, you know, we do have nutritious items as well. I know a lot of these are non-perishable items. We try as best as we can to provide them with food items that are going to fuel their bodies and you know, help them to focus. So we are what's called a choice food pantry. So basically that means that rather than having the same items, putting them in a bag, and a student walks up and we give every student the same items, they have a choice in what they're getting from the food pantry. So a few benefits of that: it does help with reducing food waste. It provides students the ability to choose items that are best for them based on any dietary needs or concerns that they have. We have a lot of students a lot of our international students are vegetarian and have special dietary needs. So it's great because it allows them to come in, see what we have available. It's almost like a little mini supermarket if you think of it that way. They can see all of the items that we have. And it provides dignity to students as well, rather than just waiting in a line and here's food and I hope you need it. I hope it's things that that are appropriate for you. This allows them to have the control of getting food that is appropriate for them. So it also allows us to more easily accept donations because we don't have this stringent list of specific things that we only take. So we always appreciate those donations. So if you're wondering what kind of items do we have, what do we provide to students, we do have 2 big industrial refrigerators with produce items and dairy items. So we always have milk, eggs, butter, cheese. We usually have at least 2 to 3 different types of fruits and 2 to 3 different types of vegetables for students to choose from. Our hygiene items have been very, very popular so far this year. So we do provide those types of items as well. and are finding that's something that we need to provide more of because they're just going very quickly so far this semester. But we also have, of course, our non-perishable items. So, you know, the crackers, the peanut butter, the ramen, canned meats, and cereals. So, as far as pantry use, so we're going by the academic year. So this was a total of 102 students that visited the pantry, that used the pantry in the first year. And then you can see we were trending in a direction that was growing. Our pantry was growing, but of course the fall of 2019 happened, and then after 2019 we know there was 2020. So that was a bit of a curveball to our food pantry as students abruptly had to leave the campus. However, there were students that you know, there were some reasons that some students weren't able to leave. Maybe they didn't have a relationship with their family and weren't welcome back home. Or we had a lot of international students that remained on campus. So we adapted, and because we weren't able to have students come in and be face-to-face, and it was kind of, you don't go to campus, but at the same time, wait, how can we help these students? So we were kind of given that, that challenge. And created the micro pantry. So this was in our student union. So even when the building was closed, it's in kind of the entryway. So it was 24/7 access, and it worked out wonderfully for us because it was contactless. Anyone could go and donate items. We had a lot of campus partners and community partners that were donating items, but also because we have a gift fund, I have a credit card, and I could go shopping and purchase additional items. And I will say that that's a regular thing to be able to rely on that gift fund to keep our pantry full. So people could donate at any time. Students could go and get the items that they needed at any time as well. So during that time, kind of the pandemic time, we of course did not have our walk-in pantry services. We also, in addition to our micro pantry, had an online ordering system so that students could still get produce items. They could still get you know, the bread and the milk and things like that. So we had an online form. They just checked the boxes of the items that they needed. We prepared those items, set a pickup time, and then they could come in and get those items. We also worked, occasionally we would have students, when students came back to campus and we had to you know, do weekly COVID testing, and sometimes students had to go into quarantine. We worked to ensure that if there were students in quarantine that needed this resource, that we could get food to them. So just kind of our 2020 forward, kind of update you on the changes since then. So as you can see, you know, that 19, 20, 2021 kind of threw a little, you know, a change as we weren't able to have our normal operations. And one thing I'll say is with our micro pantry, as wonderful as it was, because it wasn't a service where I needed to be there and we weren't signing students in and getting their orders ready. It was you know, very simple in that respect, but we weren't able to track exactly how many students were using that pantry. I will tell you, it was something that we were restocking every day. Sometimes I would spend a few $100s in groceries, fill those 2 shelves, and within a couple hours it was bare. So, so these numbers, especially our 2021 moving forward, are really conservative estimates. These aren't including the number of students that were using our micro pantry during that time. So right now, so as we ended the last school year with 126 visits per week on average. We currently have 120 students that have attended our orientation and basically expressed need in using the food pantry and are visiting our food pantry. So so as far as current, our changes, now that we're a little less, now that we know a lot more about COVID, can we ever say that it's really gone? I don't know. So I'm never sure how to word that, but You know, now that we know so much more about COVID, we have gone back to our open hour pantry where students can come in, get the items that they need. So we're not having online ordering for them, not this pickup system. So it's made it a lot simpler for them because it's a little less of a process. So that's one of our goals, is to make it as easy as possible for students that are food insecure to be able to get the items that they need. But there is one thing that they have to do is attend an orientation. So that's something that's new that we started this year, excuse me. And that's really so that they can understand and really appreciate that even though this food is at no cost to them, there is a cost to food, right? Nothing is ever really free. So we want students to know and understand that how the pantry started, why it's here on campus, and how it's supported. So so that's one of the reasons that we have this orientation, and so also they understand where it's at and what they need to do to be able to get food, and just some of the regulations within pantry usage. So, oops. We do have an intake form that students fill out this year as well, and that really has helped us to better understand what are some of the other needs that students have. So a lot of times, you know, if students don't have money for food, they're probably having a lot of stressors, a lot of trouble in other ways as well. So if there's a student, let's say that, you know, is technically homeless, maybe they're couch surfing, or they're in a hotel, we want to know these things so that as a university we can better support these students. So we have wraparound services. I work with the Dean of Students office so that if there is a student, depending on how they respond to some of their questions in their intake form, we can make sure that they get additional support, again, so that they can focus on being a student, focus on academics, and be able to get their degree, right? That's why they're here. So, so we do have that as well. Actually, going back, I did see, I skipped over one spot. So we did merge all of our services into one space. So we have merged our micro pantry. We don't have our micro pantry anymore, but we still have those items. And that has really allowed us to ensure that all students that need food will get food. Because as wonderful as the micro pantry was, we were finding that sometimes students would go to visit the micro pantry and then they'd come to us and say, well, I went to use the micro pantry and there wasn't any food there, right? Because we had no way of monitoring, you know, how often we needed to restock it. So this change has really helped. It's allowed us to ensure that every student that needs food will get food every time they come to visit us. So. Additionally, this year we have also contracted with Gordon Food Services, or GFS, to get reduced rate food supplies, and they deliver, which is wonderful. So I'll tell you, I mean, kind of going off the script here, last year was very, very busy in our food pantry. I think just because more students are back on campus, right? COVID concerns are lessened a little bit, and we were just absolutely swamped with students seeking the pantry. And so I was going to the grocery store probably at least 3 days a week, double cart, okay, the 2-cart thing, and then I'd have to go for my own family, okay? So it was just a lot of time at the grocery store. But again, I want to go back to, you know, I thank all of you for listening to this. I thank those of you that support the food pantry. It was because we have that gift fund that I really didn't have to worry about whether we would be able to, whether I could swipe my card or whether I needed to put some things back. So that really made a huge, huge difference in being able to help these students. So, and continuing on into this year, really appreciate the support so that we can continue to help our students. So, yeah, does anyone have questions? Yeah.
What kind of kitchen or cooking facilities are available to students?
So if we have a lot of students that do live off campus, so but definitely for those that live on campus, there is a common area in the residence halls for first, second year students. A lot of them bring their own microwaves, so they do have that, but there is a common area where they can go on campus, and it has cooking utensils and a stove and oven and everything, to where they can cook meals. So there are some students that will, and some roommates that will plan meals, get food. A lot of times you can tell when you have roommates coming into the pantry, because they'll kind of chatter amongst themselves of like, you get the potatoes and I'll get the, so we can make this meal together. They'll cook together. So, so they do have opportunities on campus to be able to kind of cook more, right? To have more options to make bigger meals as opposed to just with a microwave. Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yeah.
Is your pantry, is there always someone there helping the students? And are their salaries, if they're salaried, does that come from donations, or is that part of the university budget?
So our funding for the food pantry, we do have what's called the Leadership Lived Experience. And so that is funding from the university, and it is for student employees. There's kind of a selection process, and we have received that every year when we have put in that application. So we have one student employee that is paid out of university funds. And she does all of our inventory for the pantry. Sometimes I'll send her out shopping, and then I meet her later and I swipe the card, right? We can't give her the card, but so she'll do the shopping, she'll do the inventory, and she's there to check students in. This is a resource that's open to all students. They do have to verify that they're a current student. They provide their iCard. We swipe their iCard and verify that they've attended an orientation. So yeah, it is supported through the university in that way. But essentially, otherwise, we do have the gift fund that we've had since the pantry began that we are still using. Do we have time for another question? Okay.
One more slide.
One more, okay.
Sorry, is
Yeah.
it UIS Cares that does the Halloween food drive in areas around the university?
So it is the Volunteer and Civic Engagement Center. So my main role on campus is I'm the program director of the Volunteer and Civic Engagement Center. And so within that, one of my responsibilities is overseeing the food pantry. So it is actually a volunteer center event that we do, and that food that students go on Halloween and collect from the community goes to the Central Illinois Food Bank. We do have on campus the Cox Children's Center, and they do a trick-or-treating, or I guess it's not trick-or-treating, trunk-or-treat, a trunk-or-treat where people can donate items, and that does go to our food pantry. So we also have community groups and are always open to any groups that want to have a food drive and donate. We do have community donors as well that will donate non-perishable items, and that's always a big, big help as well. All right.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
And Jill will be here after the program, so if you had more questions for her, please feel free to come chat after. Now we're going to introduce Dr. Betsy Goulet and Amy Wheeler.
I'm going to have to use the mic. And I think I'm to blame for the rain, because I walked in and I said, what a beautiful day. And everyone will come to the tour and it'll be lovely, and then this. So I apologize for that. I just want to say thank you to Advancement and to Katie in particular for inviting us to showcase the work that we do here. And to Tom, where have you been hiding that sense of humor? I don't think in our morning hellos that we've been getting quite the real personality there. This guy on stand-up, I'm pretty sure. This is where we do a lot of our training. And we have had people from Chicago and all over the state come into the field station. And remember when Julia was welcoming people into the door, she's a colleague from the State Board of Education, and she was walking around like she was giving a tour on HGTV. This is my new living room. But actually, people love this space. And because the topic that we cover in our training can be overwhelming and sad and all those emotions, giving them the opportunity to just for a second turn and look out the window, and an eagle flies by. There are no iguana, to my best of my knowledge at this point, though I know you are bringing them to different locations, so I'm hopeful. But deer, plentiful. What else have we seen, Amy?
Groundhogs.
Groundhogs.
Beavers.
Beavers.
I'm like, that was a beaver, right?
So this is my colleague, Amy Wheeler, who is the director of our training. One of our other colleagues has laryngitis, so as if this day wasn't busy enough, Amy had to quickly get all the training materials and go to Douglas School, where we do our trauma-informed training for teachers and school personnel, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But if the weather cooperates, you will have the opportunity to see our residential simulation lab, which is where our students and our colleagues in different professions tackle some of these very challenging societal issues, learning how to do their jobs just a little bit better. So why did we start the Alliance? We believe strongly, and you heard this in the Chancellor's message this morning, or a little later. Was it this morning? That was a different meeting. That UIS is graduating students who have the opportunity to really get into the thick of things, hands-on, practical experiences. You know, Tom talked about playing in the rocks. Well, it's sort of like that, but it's preparing to do very serious work for at-risk children and families, for people in crisis, and having difficult conversations. It's one thing that I think we don't talk enough about in our classes, is helping students, even if it means preparing them to do a job interview. You know, the next couple generations of students are different. There's not as much talk anymore as there is texting. And we're seeing that play out in the classroom. We're seeing it in conversations, if there are conversations. And so we feel, again, that it's really important for us to engage them and teach them how to have conversations that don't come easy. And that's true for most of us. This is the house pre-pandemic. We were able to take a little pause, and some of the funding that we had kind of squirreled away, and finally do the renovations that it needed so that the house will be with us long after I retire, which, gosh, is not that too far in the future. But this little house, oddly, has been sitting on this campus for decades. How many of you were familiar with it? Just
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So at one time in its life, it was the child care center. Then the longest time, it was the credit union. And then it sat, falling into disrepair for many, many years until we re-envisioned it as our residential simulation lab for, you know, that realistic environment where we could train students and professionals within a setting that creates that realistic, what will it be like? And so Amy and I are both former investigators. I was with DCFS for about a minute and a half.
You laugh. It's true.
Yes. Amy made it longer. She was about a decade doing the same work. But I can tell you this, for both of us, it impressed upon us lots of things, but the need for training. And not just any training, really, really good training. So I don't think any of you would get on an airplane if your pilot stuck his head out and said, hey, I just finished my training this morning. I had 72 hours of, you know, on the simulator. Nor would you want to have an appendectomy if your doctor had only read about it in a textbook. But yet we were sending professionals out to do this extremely challenging work. And they never had given it any tries. They were just going straight to the field without practicing. And you know, you can be overwhelmed by the number of PowerPoints that you are subjected to in training. So that's why we really believe in this. And for our students, it repeatedly is the thing they tell us made a difference in how they feel about doing this work. So we were part of a wonderful opportunity in the, pre-pandemic, oh my gosh, it was the week of shelter in place when a team from DC came out and filmed our simulation lab. And we took them through the house, we simulated simulations, and they created a website for us where you can see actual people going through the house and replicating the work that we were doing. We're not going to show the video today because you're going to see the house. It's even better than the video. But it built this national awareness of this program, and we were really excited. You're thinking that maybe, did I do something wrong?
No, I did.
Okay. Then we had the opportunity, because you know, we're UIS and we want to learn from the work we're doing, so we did research on it. That was really important to us, to be able to give back to the field, to explain what we had learned, and to really raise awareness of why this model is so critically important for training.
Betsy doesn't brag on herself, but we truly are the only program like this in the nation. Yeah. And she doesn't like to take that credit because she's modest. But I get to come in and brag on her. If it weren't for her vision, I mean, honestly, we have consulted with people across the nation and have lots of people who want to know how we do what we do. It's changed how we look at so many things, not just in social work, but in a lot of different training environments and a lot of different professional settings that we work in. It's drastically changed how we do business. So I want to give her the proper, she can talk about the research, but I'll be in trouble later.
So one of the models, one of the methods, one of the strategies for critical thinking is using problem-based learning. Anybody familiar or have had some awareness or, okay, great. We are absolutely obsessed with problem-based learning, and I'll tell you why. Every one of you, at some point in your life, sat in a classroom where somebody told you to use your critical thinking skills. I want you to show me the face you used so that everyone would know you were tapping into those critical thinking skills. That's it, Tom's got it, I wish you guys could see it. Something like that. So the point is, critical thinking is really important. It's one way that we try to minimize our bias and rush to judgment and making decisions that are in error. But we didn't know how to do it. So we went for years wondering if at some point someone would give us the formula. What does it look like? And when we started this grant years ago, a SAMHSA grant in partnership with the University of Missouri St. Louis, we started incorporating this cycle from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, which is an amazing format for problem-based learning. And every one of our students in the Child Advocacy Studies program uses this before they go out into the field. And one of the things that we really are thrilled to watch is as they begin to figure out that they've been making decisions on their hunches and hypotheses rather than waiting until they have all the facts. Have you ever sent a text or received a text and read it in a certain way and gotten kind of mad or, wow, I didn't expect that answer? That's what our students and professionals often do. And problem-based learning stops, slows down, and lets you think through, do I have all the information I need? and that is critically important for anyone working in a crisis environment. So the idea of minimizing our bias and really cutting through the noise and making sure that we make good decisions in a lot of the work and the workforce that we are training, that could be the difference in someone's life. And we really believe that this is one pathway to reducing bias. More research because I like it. So what, do you want to explain this?
I can. So we are definitely information processors. With every new piece of information that we receive, we're trying to make sense of it. Where are they going? What are they doing? Who are they? How are they together? Like all of those things. So for this purpose, I want you to think about what you see in the picture. And how are you processing what you see, who they are, what they're doing. And I can't wait to hear your answers. There are no wrong ones and there are no right ones, but I'm curious. Anybody want to volunteer what they're thinking?
He's tuned out from the family.
He is tuned out from the family. Good one? Yes?
I think it's the uncle taking care of 3 kids and doesn't care to eat it.
Oh, you are the first one to ever say uncle, and we've trained about 500 people on this. So thank you for that. The uncle, good? Yes, ma'am.
I thought it was the grandfather.
Oh,
It's the granddaughter.
okay. That's fair too.
Looks like the little girl is comforting her mother or something with the hand, I'm not sure.
The one in the sitting on her lap.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The other one looks scared or concerned.
Okay.
Worried, yeah. Very shocked.
Does anybody believe that he's trying to watch football and they just... Okay. All right, so that somebody always says that. I'm like, why is nobody talking about that? So we make those inferences based on our experience, right? Like maybe you don't get to watch football at your house, or maybe the man of your house doesn't get to watch football, but we do that, right? Like based on our experiences, we see things through our lens. And so I think that in this exercise, we don't have enough information. We never have enough information. And as a social worker, I'll tell you, you always want to ask the next question because there's going to be a next one. But in this situation, we could talk about all kinds of things and how we see it through our lens, and we could be wrong. So I often say, it didn't work so well today, I'll say that, but what if this is a doctor's office? It didn't work well today because somebody said, they have a couch in a doctor's office. I don't think my doctor's office does that. What if that's the babysitter?
That's what I was thinking.
Okay. That kind of changes the dynamic too, right? Grandparent, uncle, babysitter. Some people think she's the older sibling. Yeah. And it doesn't really, I had a gentleman today say, well, who are those people in that picture? And I'm like, I don't know. Just some randos that we picked and put on the screen. But we want to know, right? Like that just shows the curious nature of who we are and how we want to be able to categorize things. So thanks for humoring us today.
So this is a picture of our CAS students who spend, as I mentioned, time in the residential sim lab. And this question, at least 1 or 2 students every semester says, why didn't I know about this sooner? We talk about trauma, we talk about adverse childhood experiences, and even at UIS, and this is dovetails with the previous presentation on kids who are experiencing food insecurity. These are many of our students who've had some very adverse circumstance in their life, and they bring that into this classroom because they want to know more, they want to understand, and they want to do better. They want to help kids, and for many of them, it's because no one helped them, and no one explained to them it wasn't their fault. And so we make sure that all the students ask those questions, understand what takes place in a crisis. And I should probably say most of our students are psychology, then social work, criminal justice, a smattering of teacher ed, and then the random biology student who wanders in and just kind of hangs out. I don't know, he hasn't met Tom yet. He'll dump us as soon as he meets Tom.
Yeah.
So this is just a response that a student wrote about going into the house and talking about just how hard it was to do it, but how important she knew it was for her preparation to do this work. And I'm sorry, it's probably a little bit hard to read. She said, I really enjoyed being able to go into the house, how to investigate. It was a non-stressful learning environment rather than being thrown into it, you know, for the first time, doing the actual work. Seeing the house was beneficial, but there were parts about it that were hard to deal with, such as the fact that Caleb was a real boy who died because the system didn't take the report seriously. It was hard to hear that, but at the same time, it made me want to strive to do better so kids are not dying in the future due to system mistakes. So we have a training, and that's where Amy was today. We're in year 3 of this partnership with the state board. We are working to reduce the use of suspensions and expulsions, which disproportionately affect kids of color. And one way to do that is by spending time with teachers talking about trauma, what it looks like in the classroom, how it's manifested in behaviors, and that way, with the problem-based learning, they can stop and ask the question, what else could explain this behavior? What else could it be? Before they just move that child right out of the classroom. And when they do that, when a child is suspended or expelled, you all know what the message to that child is. You don't belong here. You can't be here any longer. And unfortunately, that classroom is often the safe space. That's often where they go. Sometimes it's the place where they can feel safe enough to fall asleep. It's the place they get fed. And it's the place where there's other people around them that make them feel loved and encouraged. And so we're working, this is, I said, year 3, to now take what we've learned from this training, and we launched one similar for school resource officers, so they too can be part of the team that responds. I know we don't have much time.
Can I
Yes.
talk about that really quickly? So one of the things that we also do in this training is not just about trauma awareness, but it's also about how trauma impacts you as a professional. There are a lot of us in this room that didn't get that as a professional. Nobody talked to you about taking care of yourself. Nobody talked to you about how to survive. And in this time where we have a teacher shortage, we have a police officer shortage, we have shortage, every career that you can think of, we've been really intentional about how do we build this, but also how do we build our neighborhoods and how do we build our community so that we can think about how we can mitigate the trauma that's happening at home. I know most of you, as I look out in this crowd today, I think about when I was little and I would go down the road, trouble beat me home. I had neighbors who would call my mother and say, do you know what your daughter is doing? She did not. And I found out about it when I got home, right? We don't do that anymore. And so we think about how do we build community and how do we protect those that are the most vulnerable. But what does that look like in the classroom? So I talk about it being really easy to do that. And here's the example that I will share with you. Country girl, yes, you hear the country. I'm a Kentucky mountain girl. Had to go navigate the streets of Chicago. Yes, yeah. I was like, these people are angry. I do not understand. And so it made me really nervous.
until I got to about 63rd and Damon. For those of you that are familiar with the Inglewood community, the crossing guards are amazing. There is one in particular that you get stuck at the red light and she is waving and telling you good morning, and you just automatically want to be her friend. Like, she is out there just as cheerful and yelling and just lovely. And you see her fixing hats and tying shoes, and she's amazing. And she is the face of resilience. She is the face of that community and dependability. I tell you that because it's that easy. And how I know that is because I get a little tearful, especially after today. There was a gentleman in our training who raised his hand and said, she was my crossing guard. Right? See? And I don't even know if he could remember her name, right? But he knew her, and he knew that he mattered to her. That consistency of being able to have somebody, I hope you have a good day. I hope you're going to do well. That's what we need to be, and that's what we need to return to, and Betsy knows, and we just said we're running short on time. But I think that's really important. So, as Katie pretends like she's going to take us off the stage here, we're going to quickly tell you the future and ask you and invite you to be on this journey with us. We are at the point of having to say no, and most people that know me know I don't even know how to do that, but it's become very challenging to say yes to the requests to build this training, across the workforce and on our campus with our students. This is the Frontline Innovation Training Center that we are dreaming of, and it's there. I'm directionally impaired, so that's as good as you're going to get from me. But it's there. Yeah. And it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be community partnerships with as many people who want to be a part of training or workshops. It's going to be interdisciplinary. It's going to have huge spaces that can be changed so that the training doesn't get stagnant, so that we're able to completely reimagine different formats and environments. And so this is, as Amy said, you used the word, and I don't even know if you remembered that was up there, but we have a lot of vulnerable children, families, students in our midst, and our goal is to make sure that the people they encounter understand what they're going through and have the tools and the resources and the understanding it takes to do a better job for each and every one of them. So email, text, call me up, let me know if you're interested to hear more about this, but we would love for you to join us as we try to really, make a resource on our campus that will stand the test of time and truly change the workforce and prepare the next generation. Thanks.
All right. So thank you, Betsy and Amy, and really thank you to all of our amazing presenters today. I don't know about you all, but I feel so invigorated and re-energized after listening to just some of the amazing things that are happening on campus and at UIS. I also want to give a huge, huge thank you, to each and every one of you who made time today to come here, and most of all, that support UIS throughout the year. We are so grateful for your continued support and engagement, and I'm truly inspired by each and every one of you. As you've heard from Chancellor Gooch and all of the presenters that have been here today, here at UIS, experiential learning is a huge part of a student's journey. And so now comes the really, really special part of the program, the experiential piece. On your name tag, you may notice that you have shuttle and either 1, 2, or 3 on your name tag. There's a limo shuttle waiting outside this side door here, And it's going to take those that would like to go to the residential simulation lab that Amy and Dr. Goulet were talking about for a short tour. We're excited about this, and we hope that you will enjoy seeing what we've talked about in person. So I'd like, if you can look on your name tag, and if you have shuttle number 1 listed. Pam over here is where, if you can head over her way, there's another door, and the limo is right outside. And we have umbrellas. We will walk you out there, so hopefully you won't get drenched. For those of you that are shuttle 2 and 3, Tom and Jill will be here to answer any other questions. And feel free to mingle with guests. There's still desserts left. And I appreciate you all being here. Thank you.